A woman uses a manual wheelchair along a beachfront.
Even though Millie Gonzalez's home is just several blocks away from the ocean, her town in Monmouth County was not evacuated ahead of Hurricane Sandy's arrival in New Jersey.
A flag flutters, a flock of seagulls.
But she played it safe and decided to ride out the storm at a relative's house. Looking back now 10 years later, that decision probably saved her life.
Gonzalez looks toward the ocean.
My home did not survive Sandy. We were not in a flood zone, so we did not expect it to be so bad. It took us several days. It took us about 3 or 4 days to even be able to come back to Union Beach before the floodwaters started to recede, and it was safe enough to come here. And I tell you something, that when we got back, it felt like we were in like the zombie apocalypse, because there were people here. There weren't a lot of people, but everybody was walking around kind of lifeless and in disbelief and not really understanding like what to do or where to go or what was even happening.
Gonzalez says she packed clothes for just 3 days. That turned into 3 years.
I lost a lot of things that were, disability related. First and foremost, supplies, just things that I use on a regular basis, all of that, drenched underwater, not usable. I had a hospital bed, a medical bed at home, completely, destroyed, because we're also talking about seawater. So you're talking about even if you could sort of clean it up, you're still talking about the erosion and everything that's happening to these things. And also my manual wheelchair was at home as well. So I did also lose my manual wheelchair.
Vehicles drive through flooded roads.
Superstorm Sandy was one of the most destructive natural disasters to ever hit the United States. It caused some $70 billion in damage and destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes across New Jersey and New York.
A bulldozer pushes debris.
Navigating the disaster relief system can be a bureaucratic nightmare for anyone, but Gonzalez says for people with a disability, there are many more complications.
People didn't know what to do with folks with disabilities. They didn't know how we were going to recover, because we could not just rebuild and stay in a single level home. We had to now raise the house. We had to do other things. So there was this entire process of trying to find out information, applying for grants, applying for aid, applying for anything that was out there to help us to recover.
Waves.
But Gonzalez notes that what she went through could have been much worse. Superstorm Sandy took the lives of 117 Americans, according to the CDC. The leading cause of death was drowning, and many of those victims died inside of their homes. It's unclear how many of them had a disability, but there were many reports about disabled people being stranded without electricity or food. And some observers worry that more severe weather events like Sandy, as well as climate change, will make these kinds of emergencies even more common. I met with Javier Robles, who teaches in the Department of Kinesiology and Health at Rutgers in New Brunswick.
Jason walks alongside a man in a wheelchair.
What if I'm dependent on a personal care assistant coming to my house and getting me out of bed, right? If there's a flood or an emergency, and we saw this in Sandy. What if that person's stuck in their own home and can't get to me? Then, am I at a greater risk of dying or having something else happen because of my physical disability or inability to get into my wheelchair? And the answer is yes.
A fire truck drives through a neighborhood.
Advocates claim that Sandy revealed that authorities throughout the region didn't have a plan on how to safely evacuate or shelter people with disabilities. And in 2013, a federal judge in New York agreed. He said the city violated this community's rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA.
A press release.
The court ordered emergency management to create protocol that accommodates people with various kinds of physical and sensory disabilities. There was just one catch.
It actually does only apply to New York.
Seton Hall Law School's Daron Dorfman explains that suits would have to be filed in New Jersey and every state in order to force officials to make disaster planning more accessible for people with disabilities. But it's a risk because not every judge might rule the same as the judge in New York did. Dorfman says amending the ADA is another option.
I argue in an essay I wrote that an imagined future for the ADA should include a chapter on emergency preparations. However, I think in the current political state that we are, where we have much division within Congress, within the House, we probably will not be able to pass something like that, and that is, a shameful issue.
There is a bill currently making its way through New Jersey's State House that would expand emergency planning.
Bill S-285.
Javier Robles, who also heads the advocacy group the Disability Action Committee, supports that legislation. He says if implemented, there'd be more personnel to work with vulnerable populations on the ground.
And these people can basically go out and work with independent living centers, work with disability groups, work with the elderly, work with non-English speakers. In case there is an emergency, we're prepared.
At the beachfront.
Millie Gonzalez says her experience surviving Hurricane Sandy underlies her own advocacy. She's board president of the Partnership for Inclusive Disaster Strategies. The nonprofit works to ensure that people with disabilities are not left out of the planning before, during, or after any kind of public emergency. Gonzalez says Sandy should have been a wake-up call, but New Jersey still needs to make more progress to make sure that all of its residents stay safe.
I don't think we're safer. Over the last 10 years, there have been lots of conversations that have occurred in the state of New Jersey and beyond about how to prepare and how to keep folks with disabilities safe. But what has not occurred is giving us the infrastructure, giving us the personnel, giving us the resources to make those things happen. I think that continues to be lacking.
Gonzalez rolls down a ramp from a van toward a door and takes out her keys.
Jason Struther, Lens 15, Union Beach, Monmouth County.
A house atop pilings.